very high. Let's see. A future in where humans lived, a prosperous century and technology advancing. Gundam. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do a version of extra here.
Hello, Commander.
Welcome back. Looks nothing like when we started the construction, right? Can't believe Elinir paid for all these advanced techs. How was the trip back here from Shuller 1? Well, you're standing here should mean nothing went wrong, fortunately. As you can see, almost everything is 100% operational and ready for deployment. Even the catapult. What's left is testing our new M.A.S.S. Another important thing that we need to do is think of a good name of our private military company. Well, it is requirement as I need to turn in documents for the founding of this PMC to the WDF. Blah 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 blah. Dejin. Oh. That should do. That has a nice swing to it. Yeah, keep close. Okay, I'll be scanning all these documents for the WDF, where they've been hounding me for a while now. Oh, Reina! That's my wife's name. Reina said that as she moved towards the briefing room, that's where she set up her office in this small building. Ooh, that really looks like Aksha. So we're gonna customize this. Aksha. MK01. Move that. What? Okay. Frames, armors. Ooh, these ones are really cool. Assemble. Design. Caution slot. Label graphic. Okay. Select style. Of course we're gonna pick. How do I pick? Oh, okay. It's going to be blue. Woohoo! Titanium. There you go. No, I think these ones should be. I think it should be white. Or this one. Yeah, that should be white. Metal. Yeah. And then. What's this? Ooh. That's cool. Oh, we're going for the metal. Assemble. How can I replace that? Nope. Is there any way I can replace this? Okay, number 4. Color. yellow metallic green. This should be metal, metallic white metal. Okay, edit style. We're gonna put this. No. How do I? Ah, I was in the wrong. That is why. Should be not this one. You're going to be just like extra right now. Let me check what's the combination of X here. Gundam extra. Gundam extra. Oh, it doesn't have blue in his. No, it doesn't have blue in his head. So please no. Assemble armor. It should be this one. No. There you go. This is going to be epic. Okay. This one should do it. Oh, this one. Yeah, pretty like this one. And we're gonna have to color it like. Oh. Save. And then we're gonna color it like metal. Two would be glossy. Yeah. And then the head would be assemble. Armor. This one? No. This one? Nope. This one? Nope. This one. I think this is the closest one. Ooh, this one's nice. Oh man, this one's nice. Look at that. We need to pick something as close as Extra's head. Like, probably this one? Or this one? Yeah, that's fine. And then we're gonna color it black. Color it. It should be white. Metallic white. Where is that metallic? Gunmetal. Ooh, that's cool. White metal. And it's the closest one yet, so I'm gonna go for the, and that should be a blue. Oh no, no. Metal. A little bit of gunmetal. Where's the gunmetal? No, why did you do that? Right. Edit style. No. Copy, paste. Then how about here? Armor. That's not an actual thing. This one should do it. Yeah, guess that one. That's cool. But I guess this one should do it. And then we're gonna... Is this his eyes? How do we... How do we change this eyes decode? How do I change his eyes? Edit style pattern. Oh, that's cool. I needed to change his eyes. Sub element. Cool. Edit style. Copy. That's fine. Should be metal, white metal as well. Unfortunately, there's no way to change. Probably. There you go. Neck. Ooh, that's fine. That's cool. Where should we affect all armors? Is there any way that I can change his eyes? I think there's no way. Yeah, I think there's no way we can change his eyes. That's not... No, that's fine. Green is fine as well. But at least we should get something that is dark gray. Not dark gray. Platinum. This one should be... white metal. And this one should be... Oh, titanium is fine. Silver. White metal. Yeah. That should be fine. And here is this one. Should be white metal as well. Why it's not changing? I feel like this one should be something more like action. But this one's really cool. Yeah, that's fine. What's this? Oh, it's the neck. Didn't realize you can still customize even the neck. Unfortunately, they don't have something as close to Axe's chest, so we're just gonna pick something that looks kind of cool. Probably this one, and then we're just gonna use something like a blue and that this should be red. Oh, red glow. No, not glowing. This one, red. That red is fine. And then this should be blue, I guess. Ooh, why? Oh man. This one should be something on the yellow side. Yellow? What the heck is going on? One should be off. Yellow. Yeah, yellow is fine. It's got some bit of yellow, and this one should be red. Oh, come on. Should be blue. What the heck am I doing? It's not red, it should be blue. Then and this one, this should be red. Where is the red one? Oh, there you go. And this should be yellow, not blue. And what is that part? This one. Oh. How should I change this part here? It's already red. I don't know how to change this part here. How about we just yellow, just a red one. Okay, how about we just color it blue? Everything is blue. And then how do we change this part here? There's no more decal. Oh, that's cool. Decal paint. And then we'll just call this as yellow. It's got a little bit of yellow in there. And then oh, okay. Okay, this one is, it should be blue. That should be fine. No, this is where we can color it now. Although Ash has only got blue in the chest, but I want to color it red. But yeah, we should just color it blue for now. And then what's this? This would be a yellow. Gold is not there. Should be as close as we can get. And this one, this should be a red. Ooh la la. Yes, that's a red. He's got a little bit of gray, so that's fine. Armor. Ooh. Oh man. Oh, Destiny. What the heck? Oh crap, this is so good. What's on Axios back? Oh, they don't have the GN drive, so oh man, it's gonna be a Destiny looking something. Yeah, this should be the closest thing. This one's so big, and this one's so Destiny looking like. Oh, this one's cool as well, and this one as well. But I'm probably gonna pick this one or this one. Yeah, this. And then we're gonna lose the orange part. It should be blue. Alright, how about this one? I want to see the shoulder. Yeah, let's go to the shoulder. Here. That is so extra. This one. Yeah, this should be. And then we're gonna color it. Color it. Everything's blue. Yeah, everything should be blue. Blue metal? Ooh. Why it's not changing? Why it's not changing? Yeah, we're gonna go for the blue metal. Then this one should be a little bit of gray. I mean, it's not gray, but it's still blue one. But that should be no, we'll go for the metal, then we're gonna mirror it. And then his arms would be all white. Oh, that's a leg. Where is it? This one? This should be all white. White metal. Ooh. White metal. Gun metal. No white metal. I think a gray would be fine. Yeah. gonna... What's this? What's this? Yeah, that should do. This one would be... Oh, before that, we would like to see what are the available. Yeah, that should be fine. This one should also be white. And then, where is this part? Is that the elbow? Oh yeah. Anything that no, that's not very eggshell looking. Yeah, that should be fine. And then we're gonna use white because we know eggshells all white. Mirror and then mirror. Then his legs would be, yeah, what? That's fine. Where can we get? Oh, these are the skirts. So we're on the skirts. This should not... Oh, okay. So I'm gonna check if there's anything that is as close as extra skirt. Unfortunately, it doesn't have. They don't have it. Yep. Yeah, I guess they don't have it. I guess this one's the closest thing. Save it, and then we're gonna color it as some white. There's only white. Oh, no, not that one. This one. And then this should be red. Don't have it here. So it seems that we don't really have that much of a choice, but right now we're just gonna go for something like the freedom. And then let's just mirror it. And then this one's the side. It doesn't really have the side. But let's just pick something that is badass looking. Yeah, this should be good for it. And then we're just gonna color it. Oh wait, we're just gonna color it white again. And then we're gonna mirror it. I'm really getting hang a bit of these. This the back skirt would be. Oh, this one's cool. How about this one? Oh, This one's like, this looks like a thruster, so we're just gonna go for it. And then we're gonna mirror it. This bust. No. I feel like this should be white. Yeah. Because he doesn't really have something like that. So on the legs part now. Well, this is so thin. There's something as bulky as Extra's legs. Yeah, this should do. That should do the trick. Or we could go for this one. Yeah, we could probably go for this one. Or this one. Yeah, that one's pretty cool. And then we're gonna mirror it again. But this one will be white metal, and then this one would be the gun metal, dark gray. Where is the gun metal? There. Now we're gonna mirror it again. And then going knees, I guess. Oh. We don't have anything that so extra. Oh wait. I guess this is the closest part to action. Oh wait. About this one. Yeah, I guess this is the closest part. Not that one, of course. Yeah, I guess this one is the closest part. We're gonna have to color in. It doesn't have white metal. White metal. Then we're gonna mirror it again. And here would be. Oh, we're already done. No. That's too bulky. Ooh, that's cool. If we pick this one, we're gonna. No. Yeah, this is the closest one. But yeah, that should be fine. We'll just have to remove the orange. This will be. Oh wait. Yeah, about this one. Oh. Yeah. It's the closest. Okay. And then we're gonna mirror that. And then finally for the shoes. That side. This is the closest. I like that shoes. Yeah, this is the closest one. So we're gonna save that and then color it. Let's be red. Red metal? No. Red gloss. Dark red. Dark red metal. Then mirror it again. Go here. Yeah. Oh, that is cool. Yeah, this should be. It should be dark red metal. Oh, I think I like this one better. Yeah. And about this one. Should do it. Do we get an action now? Okay. Random armors. Assemble. Color. Custom style. So we got our own action now. And how about the weapons? Kind of pretty much excited with this game. Ooh. No, no, no. One hand wielding physical grip. Oh, that is not what it looks like. To set the hit damage properly, close combat weapon, unlock it by developing architect nodes. Okay. What's this? Oh. Assemble. Deco. So three part. All right, now we can only. Oh, okay. That's what we're talking about. Where's the GN blade? Ooh, that's cool. Oh, this should. Oh, this should be the closest one to GN blade. That is so Destiny. Cause this one, oh, yeah, this should be the closest to GN blade, I guess. And then we're gonna, if we can just, can we have him dual wielding or something? But if we can't, then we'll just do a GN blade assaulter. What's the color? Should be gray. This should be green something. And then I'm just gonna probably color it blue. Even though this is not the actual, not really the actual blade, but we're just gonna do it that way anyway. We're going to have it black like that. Yeah, that should be fine. And for his gun, I don't know what. I forgot his gun already. Oh, the gun thing. I think actually they didn't have a Gatling gun, so just gonna pick something smaller. Oh yeah. This one. It's not blue. This should be gray. No. With the green, then there should be no red. There should be black as well. And then we're just gonna put a hint of blue here to make it there. That should do it. Wouldn't really care about his gun because I didn't know if I didn't remember if it actually does have a gun, so we're just gonna color it like a barrel. Look at this. It's so cool. But I'm pretty sure he's got a cannon. Ooh, this one's nice. A Gatling gun. Yeah, we're gonna save that. Then pull the trigger. Yes. Nadle. That's not. Just looks like a shotgun. Yeah, will do for that. And then we're just gonna give it a little bit of extras. Red metal. Then then we should put some little bit of blue. Where's the blue one? Yeah, it's not really extras, but we're just gonna settle it for now. Do it. And then again, we're just gonna put a little bit of red. Buster cannon. Ooh, this is nice. Yeah, I'm gonna go for that, even though that isn't really extra. And slap it with a blue color. Oh. So right now, what's this? I don't know what is this. Ah, bullet pod. And just gonna go for something that is. Yeah, the smaller the better, so we don't know. Just gonna snap it with a little bit of red, dark red. Yeah. Then what's this? Generator. That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go for the one that is rotating. And this one's energy pod. Go for the rotating one. And keep it a little bit of red, dark red. Oh crap. Should be a little bit of blue. Should be red, maybe? Yeah, should be fine. Press enter. Ooh, set weapon. What's this? It's a energy launcher. This one, bullet launcher. This one, I forgot what was the bullet trigger. M.A.S.S. GN cannon. I forgot what was it, so I'm just gonna name it. Oh. M.A.S.S. GN pistol. GN pistol? Yeah, should be fine. Buster sword. So we got it. Weapons, armors, tuning. What's with the tuning? This is where we suck at. Verse engine, gears. Provide 3 slots. I don't know how to do it yet. Engine. Yeah, I think we don't have right click to remove. Yeah, we don't have anything to add yet, right at the moment. That's fine. Oh, I didn't know they got a multiplayer. Development upgrade abilities. Ooh, this is nice. Engine. What's this? Loaded an alternative heavy model of engine uses to operate M.A.S.S. What's this? Metal platings. Heat turbines. Modified heat turbines to increase speed. Oh, we're gonna go for that. Charge it. Remove most armor to attain more speed. And okay, go here. How much points do we have? Credit 98. Build with modified alloy. What's this? Used to upgrade mass. Ooh, that is so cool. What's this? And with more thermal efficiency that does not sacrifice much from speed. What's this? Level 3 and above. Okay. Oh, I forgot. There's still an OS architect. Ooh, that is so complicated, you know. An OS that simulates the M.A.S.S as your exoskeleton. Synchronize the links between your neural nerves and perfectly. Enhancement module. Haha. Okay. So I don't have enough resources now. Boost train, combat train. Oh, okay. So that's a good thing because there's multiplayer is coming, so that's fine. Pacific Red. This should be the Philippines. and where do we go from here? Shelter 7. What's left is to test it out in the combat simulator before we're sure it's ready for missions. I've input all data to simulate our M.A.S.S frame already to what you're controlling. Or just like real thing. Alright, let's go. Start mission. Don't worry when...
Mission start.
Oh, that is not so extra. Block. No. Abort mission. I didn't like the sword. Frames of weapons. I'm gonna change the sword from this one to grip. Not that one. Yeah, this should be. Should do it. Okay, let's go to the mission. Okay, that's fine.
Mission start.
What's this? Oh, okay. How can we go there?
Mission clear.
Oh, I didn't like this thing in his shoulder. So we're gonna remove that. Tuning weapons. I think this is no, this one. I don't know how to remove this. Is there any way that we can remove this from his shoulder? Because it doesn't look good. Yeah, let's just try that one. Development. Okay. We're gonna go for module helps optimizing shield usage. This one. Oh, where? What? Artifact. So. Okay. Event. What's this? Thing is, I didn't read that. Adjust parameters. Okay. Install new controllers into the system up to your likings. Remember, though, that each piece of hardware can only be tuned up a certain way, and we can't have everything. Just come ask me if you want to tune it up some way. That. Okay. Heat turbines and combustion microcontroller. Metal platings. Yeah. And oh, that is how. Loaded engine. Burst engine. Okay. We're gonna go for the loaded engine. Mission. Nah, we're not gonna Action. That's so nice. When low on ammo, you have a chance to find some ammo. Okay. Ooh, this is nice.
Mission start.
So where are we going right now? Oh, those are ammos. Okay. Ooh. This is a nice game. This one's huge. Woohoo! Ooh. Haha, no way. That is so cool. Ooh, this one's the one. That is so cool. Investigate. Nice, one more there. Complete. Alright, Commander, we've covered all the map. From your camera feed, we can see their attacks by quartz. Ooh. So this is the boss. Oh, they're crap. They're immune. baby. This is awesome. Run! Oh crap. Don't go there. Dead. That's what they like. Oh, I'm dying. Nope, nope, nope. Didn't hit him. That was so hard. I think I found his weaknesses. Oh, that's... Run, baby. No ammo. Ah, no. So wrong. That was so wrong. go. You're gonna die. No ammo. Huh. Huh. It's cool. Ooh, lots of pain. That is the drop.
Mission clear.
So where are we going next? Abstract. That is so cool. That is so cool. Okay. Okay. This is the end of the demo. Oh man. Alright then.